The crowd roared like a living beast, thousands of alien voices blending into a hungry, electric pulse. Lights pulsed over the blood-stained sands of the arena floor as gates groaned open, revealing the first contender, Crag the Skull Splitter. 12 feet tall, scales like starship hull plating, and twin tusks curling from a brutal jaw, Crag raised his battle axe and bellowed to the audience. Another soft one for the pit. What do they feed these mammals? Porridge. Laughter exploded from the stands. The announcer's voice crackled through the loudspeakers, dripping with amusement. Straight from Earth's penal colonies, we present today's underdog, assuming you believe in miracles, the human. The second gate creaked open. Out stepped a man, not in armor, but in a torn, sleeveless jumpsuit. Lean, sunburned skin. Scar over one brow. No weapons. Just a pair of calloused hands and a gaze so steady it chilled even the rowdiest sections of the crowd. He was unimpressive by alien standards. No exoskeleton. No claws. No cybernetic implants. But he walked like he'd already been through hell and didn't particularly mind going back. Crag snorted. They sent a janitor? The human didn't respond. He bent one knee, stretching his shoulders, rolled his neck until it cracked. His silence made Crag's grin twitch. Jack Rains wasn't new to the scent of blood. Not fresh out of some colony penal camp. No, he'd been a Special Forces operative before politics got in the way. Before a general's mistake got a town full of kids burned alive, and Jack's refusal to obey turned into a convenient scapegoat. But now wasn't the time for memories. Now was the time for calibration. Observation. The smell of iron and ozone in the air. The way Crag favored his left leg. How the crowd's energy surged with every taunt. Jack filed it all away with military precision. A horn sounded. The match began. Crag charged like a tidal wave. Jack moved. Not fast, surgical. He ducked the axe with a sidestep so tight the blade sang past his ear. Then a pivot, dropping low and slamming his elbow into Crag's knee joint. The alien stumbled, more shocked than hurt. Oh ho! Crag barked. It wriggles. He backhanded Jack across the sand. The human rolled, came up coughing dust, a smear of blood across his chin. But he was grinning. Got your attention, Jack said. Crag thundered forward. This time the axe came low. Jack vaulted it, springing off the flat of the blade like a wall runner. He twisted midair and landed on Crag's shoulders, jabbing 2 fingers into the alien's eye sockets. Crag howled and flung him away. Jack hit the sand hard, skidding, but already rising. The crowd had quieted. Not silent, but confused. A crack in the narrative. Crag shook blood from his eyes. That was a mistake. Jack was breathing hard now, chest heaving, but his eyes never left his opponent. You think I'm trying to win? The alien paused, puzzled. Jack lifted a handful of sand, let it sift through his fingers. The breeze caught it and flung it sideways. You don't know anything about humans, Jack said softly. Crag snarled, feinted with his axe, then lunged with a punch. Jack caught the forearm, redirected it, and used the momentum to swing up, driving both feet into Crag's throat. The impact staggered the giant. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. Jack landed lightly, swaying on the balls of his feet. Every movement economical, coiled. He wasn't just improvising, he was reading Crag, mapping out the rhythm of the beast. Crag growled. You fight like a worm. Fast, but soft. Jack pointed to the gash, now seeping under Crag's jawline. Soft doesn't do that. There was a shift in the arena now. The laughter had died. Some aliens leaned forward. Others checked the odds on their betting slates. Jack's breath whistled through his nose. The side of his ribs burned from the earlier blow. But pain was information. Pain meant the game was still on. Crag lunged again. Faster, angrier. Jack sidestepped, grabbing a loose rock, and slammed it into the alien's hand as it came down. Crag dropped the axe. Jack didn't take it. He just stepped back and smiled. I don't need a weapon, he said. You brought enough rage for both of us. Crag's chest rose and fell. For the first time, Hesitation flickered behind those tusked jaws. Jack's voice dropped an octave, calm, surgical. You ever wonder why we keep winning wars we should lose? Why every empire that tries to conquer Earth ends up with their fleet in flames? Crag didn't answer. Jack stepped closer. You look at us and see meat. But we're not apex predators because of size or speed. We're the top because we learn. Every blow, every loss, we carry it. Turn it into something worse. Something smarter. The horn sounded again, end of round. Jack walked back toward the shadowed edge of the pit, not even looking behind him. Crag stood alone, breathing raggedly, surrounded by doubt. Just before disappearing into the prep tunnel, Jack glanced over his shoulder. You forgot rule number 1 about humans, he said. Crag scowled. What's that? Jack grinned, eyes dark with promise. We don't die easy. Crag slammed his fist into the steel wall of the waiting chamber, denting it with a roar. A medic drone buzzed around him, scanning bruises and issuing analgesics, but he swatted it away. Out of my face. On the other side of the chamber wall, Jack Rains sat in silence. His ribs throbbed in a syncopated rhythm, but he welcomed the pain, a metronome for focus. He wrapped his side in torn cloth from his jumpsuit, improvised pressure bandaging with a discarded belt. Every soldier knows. Control your breathing, control your fear. A voice crackled through the overhead system. Round 2 commencing in 30 seconds. Jack stood, rolled his shoulder once. No adrenaline this time, just a steady readiness, like loading a familiar weapon. Back in the arena, the crowd had changed. They weren't jeering anymore. They were watching, trying to decipher what they'd just seen. Crag, their champion, had been shaken, and worse, outmaneuvered. The gates reopened. Sand hissed under their feet as the 2 fighters emerged once more into the floodlights. Crag didn't speak this time. His jaw was tight, his eyes sharper. He held a new weapon, twin crescent blades, curved like sickles, dripping faint venom from their edges. Jack noted the change. Adaptation. Rage wasn't leading now, pride was. That made Crag more dangerous. They circled. Crag struck first, a blur of steel, faster than his size suggested. Jack barely ducked the first slash and deflected the second with a forearm block that opened a shallow cut. The venom hissed against his skin, but the burn was minor, more psychological warfare than biochemical. Jack spun away and kicked Crag's inner thigh, making the alien stumble. Crag responded with a backhand that clipped Jack's temple and sent him sprawling. The crowd gasped. Blood painted the sand. Crag advanced, blades raised for the finish. Jack didn't move. At the last second, as Crag lunged, Jack twisted onto his back and kicked upward, catching Crag square in the sternum. The impact sent the alien off balance. Jack surged upward and drove his elbow into the side of Crag's neck, right below the gill-like folds where his species drew supplemental oxygen. Crag choked, flailing, and dropped one of the sickles. Jack snatched it mid-fall, flipped it in his grip, and held it to Crag's throat. The crowd went silent. Crag froze. His chest heaved. Blood ran from his nose, his pride leaking with it. Jack didn't drive the blade home. Instead, he leaned in close, voice calm. You're a champion because they taught you to crush, not to think. You've never had to. Crag hissed, eyes wide. Jack stepped back, lowering the blade, and tossed it to the ground. You're not my enemy, he said. You're just a mirror. Crag staggered to one knee, confused, humiliated, and, for the first time, uncertain. Jack let the moment hang. Let the crowd absorb it. He didn't need to kill Crag. He'd already exposed the truth. Humans didn't come to these arenas because they couldn't win. They stayed away because winning would ruin the myth. Jack wiped blood from his face and turned to the announcer's box, voice raised. Next time you want entertainment, pick someone who knows the rules. The announcer's voice stuttered to life, but it lacked its earlier swagger. The match continues per arena protocol. Jack turned back to Crag. You want to keep going? Crag looked down. Then slowly, deliberately shook his head. Jack didn't smile. This wasn't a victory. It was a demonstration. He walked to the edge of the pit, where the medics would be waiting. His body ached, and his vision pulsed with delayed trauma, but his mind was crystal clear. Behind him, Crag remained on his knees. Not defeated by strength, but by a human's refusal to play by the expected script. As the gates began to close, Jack looked back one last time. Crag met his gaze. No hatred there, just something heavier. Respect. And beneath it, a dawning fear. Not of Jack, of what he represented. The third horn echoed like a war drum across the arena, deep and final. A signal that there would be no more breaks. No more mercy. One would stand, one would fall. Crag stepped onto the sand with no weapon. His armor was gone, stripped down to hardened skin and scarred muscle. Blood crusted along his side. His breathing was steady, but not calm, measured, cautious. For the first time in his long career, he was entering a fight he didn't know how to win. Across from him, Jack Rains returned to the pit like a ghost. His jumpsuit was shredded. His knuckles were raw. His left eye was swelling shut. But he walked like gravity was a choice. Like pain was just a background hum in a familiar song. No introductions this time. No announcer's flair. The audience was already locked in, silent, enthralled. Crag moved first, circling. He no longer underestimated Jack, and that hesitation gave Jack his first advantage. "You changed your rhythm," Jack said, circling with him. "Smart." Crag growled. "I'm not just brawn." "Neither am I," Jack replied. "That's what scared you." Crag lunged, claws sweeping low. Jack deflected with a forearm, took the hit to his shoulder, and countered with a headbutt that staggered the giant. Blood burst from Crag's nose anew. Jack pressed forward, driving his knee into Crag's ribs. Bone cracked. Crag roared, lifted Jack bodily, and slammed him into the ground. The impact shook the arena. Jack gasped, vision swimming. Crag raised a fist to finish it. Jack twisted at the last second and drove his fingers into a nerve cluster just under Crag's arm. The beast convulsed, dropped him. They both rolled away, each gasping, bleeding, spent. Jack coughed once, spat red into the sand. "This is what we do." Crag's eyes were wild. "You fight like death is an old friend." Jack wiped sweat from his brow, smearing it with dust. "Because it is." Crag rose, slower now. His limbs trembled with every motion. Jack stood too, wobbling on one leg. His ankle screamed, possibly sprained. But neither backed down. Jack took one step forward. Then another. Every nerve in his body begged him to stop, to collapse. But his will marched ahead of his flesh. Crag, battered and bewildered, looked at the human before him, smaller, weaker, outmatched, and finally understood the horror of the species. Not their weapons. Not their technology. Their refusal to break. Jack didn't attack. He simply stared at Crag and asked, voice hoarse, "Do you know what we call people like you back home?" Crag didn't answer. "Challenge," Jack said. "Not threat. Not monster. Just something to learn from." Crag dropped to one knee, panting. "You want to finish it?" Jack shook his head.
"No. Why?"
Jack turned, half limping toward the gate as it creaked open again. "Because the galaxy's watching. And they need to see what real strength looks like." Crag remained there, kneeling in the sand, defeated not by a blade, but by a concept, restraint as power. The audience erupted, not with cheers, but with an unstable roar. Confusion, awe, fear. Across the stars, millions watched as the myth shattered. The unbeatable was beaten. Not by a beast, but by a human. Security guards met Jack at the gate, stunned silent. One tried to reach for his arm. Jack brushed him off. He didn't speak again as they led him back through the halls. Somewhere above, in a high command tower, a Varnax general stared at the feed and whispered to his aide, "We've made a mistake." Jack had never come to win the fight. He came to make a point, and now the galaxy would have to live with it.